So there's this place in the Negev desert called Tel Beersheba. This is believed to be the biblical Beersheba where Abraham lived. Yes, Abraham of the Bible. And what's interesting is that at the entrance of the site, they've got this ancient well. And they believe that this well could be the well of Abraham. But here's the big problem. There's another site just a few miles away, and they also claim to have found the well of Abraham. So, which one is it? Or maybe it's neither of them. After days and days of research, I stumbled upon a few archaeological papers that reveal the answers. And I'm genuinely shocked. Not only do we find evidence that points to the well of Abraham, but in the process we discover this 150-year-old book written by a man who travels the land from Dan all the way down to Beersheba, and he writes down and draws illustrations of everything he sees. And when he gets to Beersheba, he finds this well, ancient well in the middle of nowhere, where there was no city there was nothing. But then we flip to the next page and we keep on reading, and he writes something about Beersheba that absolutely blew our mind away. It kind of changed everything we thought we knew about Beersheba. So, cue the intro. We start our journey in Israel's Negev desert. Unlike any other videos that we've done in Jerusalem and north of Israel, this region looks quite different. It's all parched and dry. But in the middle of this desert, there is a large city, Beersheba, or in Hebrew, Beersheba, and it's considered to be the capital of this desert. And just a few miles east of it is our destination, the famous archaeological site, Tel Beersheba.
This is it?
This is so exciting. Wow. Okay.
Wonderful.
Wow. Look at this.
There's entrance.
This is the officially recognized site of the biblical city of Beersheba. It is a gigantic tell, covering a total area of 45 acres and elevated 20 meters or 65 feet above the surrounding area. This is a big place. You need a map to find your way around. After ascending 65 feet on the ramp, we will enter the site through the ancient city gate. Oh, this is the city gate.
Look at this pathway.
Wow. The significance of what had been discovered here is immense. In fact, UNESCO, an agency of the United Nations, has recognized this park as a World Heritage Site. The excavations began in 1969. Under the leadership of Yohanan Aharoni and then Zeev Herzog, the excavations lasted for decades, and the amount of findings and data points that they uncovered was so huge that it took them over 15 years to analyze. The excavation project as a whole took a collective 42,900 workdays, as they uncovered nearly 16,000 baskets of earth filled with tens of thousands of ancient artifacts. Okay, so the amount of data they've collected is so enormous that they had to write their own computer software called Beer 7 just to process it all. And when they were done, they released this final excavation report. 1,509 pages long. No, I'm not kidding. It really is. 3 volumes, 37 chapters, and 1,509 pages long. And just for comparison, if we print the Bible on the same format, in the same font size, we would get 1,200 pages for the entire Bible. Yes, this report is larger than the Bible. There is a lot of information here. I mean, they spent decades preparing this, and it is absolutely incredible. But to save you on 42 hours of reading this report, we're just going to present the highlights. Specifically those pertaining to the questions, did Abraham really live here? And did he dig a well of oath 4,000 years ago in this place? So, without any further ado, let's dig in. This site is divided into 5 quarters, each showcasing unique and fascinating ancient artifacts. At the entrance is the outer gate, stone foundation topped with mud bricks, a structural element you'll see a lot throughout the site. At the gate, a drainage channel can be seen, covered by stones and incorporated into the pavement. It is believed this channel once led the excess rainwater away from the city to prevent damage to the walls.
How old are these rocks?
I don't know. Did Abraham walk here?
Right out the main gate is the city square. All streets led to this central plaza, typically where the local market and gatherings could be held. And anyone standing in the city square could not miss the governor's palace, an impressive structure that stands out in size and design. Down the main street is the residential quarter, but unlike most houses, these were integrated into the city wall.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around this place. It is first time and so excitement, a lot of questions.
And to support all the people in the city, food was stored in a gigantic storehouse, a 600 square meter complex.
And they have like remains of pillars here. Wow.
And water? Well, provided by an ingenious water system, an enormous water reservoir that they dug 17 meters underground.
How many places can you be walking and finding ancient pottery right under your feet? Look at this. Look. You can actually see the rim.
That is so cool.
There are so many cool discoveries in this site, and one of the most significant of them is the horned altar.
This is incredible. They found here an actual altar, even though they found the horns and the altar kind of disassembled and reused in the walls, but still they were able to put it together like a puzzle, and it's a stone altar.
Some archaeologists believe it to be the high place, an altar that Josiah destroyed in the 7th century. A truly fascinating discovery. Okay, but we're not here to look at the altar. We're here to find the answers to the main question. Where is the well of Abraham?
Wow.
I think this is it.
That's the well.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yo.
Look how deep this thing is.
Oh my goodness.
You can't even see the... I think I see a reflection of water, but you can't really see the end.
Okay, so in Genesis 21, it says that Abraham goes to live in the Negev, somewhere around this area. And he enters a territory under the control of King Abimelech, or in Hebrew, Avimelech. And of course, if you live in the Negev, you need water. So Abraham digs a well, but then the servants of Abimelech come and they seize this well. And this causes a big dispute between Abraham and the men of Abimelech. So then Abraham goes directly to the king and complains to him. And when King Abimelech hears about this problem, he says something in the like that he was not aware of this before. And so Abraham and Abimelech decide to avoid war and instead make a treaty. And to seal this treaty, Abraham gives Abimelech 7 lambs. Then the two men swear an oath, and Abraham is publicly recognized as the true owner of this well. And as a result, it says they call this place Beersheba. And that's because in Hebrew, Be'er means a well, and Sheva means an oath, the well of oath. While there are many wells in Israel, this one is very special. I mean, this well represents one of the first treaties ever made between Philistines and the patriarchs. This well represents the foundation of the name to the city of Beersheba. So it would be really awesome if we could identify its true location. Which brings us to the main question, is this the well?
Can you imagine this could be the well that Abraham dug? I mean, that's mind-blowing. Can you imagine nothing here, just a few tents of Abraham, this well, water, Abimelech. But how do they know that this is the well that Abraham dug? Is there any archaeological evidence to point, hey, this does date to 4,000 years of age?
To answer this question, we'll need to look at the archaeological records and examine the facts. This particular well is located at the entrance of the city, but it is outside of the city walls. Zev Herzog, baffled by this unusual spot, suggests that the well was dug first and then the city was built around it, or next to it. So this part sits very well with the biblical story, and it looks like we have something very promising here, but we shouldn't jump to conclusions so fast, we need to keep digging deeper. The well was dug down to the astonishing depth of 69 meters. To put into perspective, that is roughly equivalent to a 20-story building. If we take into account that the whole mound is only 20 meters tall, that means that the well goes 15 stories below the mound. This depth should guarantee that they would have water all year long if they tap into the water source beneath the ground. But unfortunately, we can't go down there right now to examine it. Even the archaeologists had technical difficulties getting to the bottom when they were excavating this well. But luckily, there is another pit. It is located on the north side of the city, and it is much wider, much larger, and it even has an ancient staircase that leads to the very bottom. This is it.
Wow. Wow. So we walk through that tunnel and come out on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Wow. Look how huge it is.
We are going really deep down.
That's a lot of stairs.
That is a lot of stairs. Oh. These stairs look like they are from the ancient times. None of them are symmetrical.
Yeah.
Wow. You feel like an air conditioning on you.
Wow, yes. I can feel the cold air.
Wow. Do you feel it?
Yeah.
That is cool.
Oh, that's insane.
Oh, big girl.
Whoa.
Yes.
This is one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. There are literally water reservoirs in every corner. They've chiseled so much of the mountain and they've done this snake path, continually descending lower and lower. Wow.
Now, this shaft and water reservoir is not as old and not as deep as the well. And it seems like they did not need to dig much deeper because they reached a level where the floodwaters from the nearby stream could flood in and fill the reservoir. Which is kind of hard to believe because we're in the middle of a desert. What water stream? I mean, it's all dry here.
Okay, this was fascinating. Let's go now take a look at that stream, the Hebron River, because that's where Abram could have fetched the water into the well, so that's where it pulls in the water from.
But to our surprise, we found out that there is actually a water stream that is still here to this day. Now, if we can find it, this would be awesome because that would put another piece into this puzzle.
There it is.
The river is down there, but we need to make a U-turn, cross the road, and then somehow go down there.
Looking at the satellite map, we notice that the stream is literally a few yards away. But to get there, we'll have to take this up road and drive through some sketchy terrain.
I think this is the road that goes down.
That doesn't look kosher to me. You can drive right under that thing, my goodness.
Oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever driven under a electricity pole ever before in my life. That's a first.
But I see a wall. That looks ancient down there.
Whoa, you are right.
Driving through this area is a little bit embarrassing. There's so much trash, so much dirt. But then I thought, you know, the people who live here, the Bedouins of the area, they live in such conditions where they're just thinking, how can we survive? And not how can we keep the ecological system clean? And maybe if we were in their shoes, we would have been the same way. It's just a different mindset, and it's easy to judge by just looking at the trash, but I think it requires a bit more of a study of why this is here, and maybe how can we help the people.
I see the water. Let's go take a look.
Wow. No way.
How? We're in the middle of August. It's scorching heat outside, and there's still flowing water in the desert. That explains how the wells fill up with water, because there is a water source in this very desert. Magnificent.
And it's green down there.
That is one of the most contaminated rivers I've ever seen. Look at all the algae. I mean, the algae tells you that the water is very, very dirty. You can see all the foaming. It's foaming up over there. All the algae and growth. Yet nonetheless, the river is still here.
Okay, so we have an ancient city, we have an ancient well, and we have a water source. But is this the well of Abraham? According to Tel Beersheba brochure, some scholars suggest that it may very well be. And while all of this sounds very promising, there's this just one giant elephant-sized problem that we cannot overlook. This whole site dates only as far back as the 12th century BC.
So when you dig a site like this, at the top you usually find artifacts that are more modern. The lower you go, the deeper you dig down, the older the artifacts become. And so they dug really deep in the site for many years. And it's interesting that the earliest they got to is 12th century BC.
12th century BC is like 800 years after Abraham walked the earth. Something doesn't add up. Let's read this again. So they dug the site to the very bottom, literally to bedrock, and the oldest artifacts they found dated to the year 1250 BC, which is several hundred years after the latest date scholars proposed for Abraham. This is a big problem. Yes, according to the report, there were some artifacts dating way back before time of Abraham. But those were just a few sherds, a few pottery vessels, nothing substantial to constitute a habitation. In fact, Zeev Herzog concludes that there is no evidence whatever of any earlier habitation at Tel Beersheba. Okay, but what about the well? Does all this mean that this well was also built 800 years after Abraham? When it comes to the well, in one of the archaeological reports, they say that the original date of the well was difficult to determine. But circumstantial evidence suggests that it was dug no earlier than the 12th century BC. Once again, this too almost a millennia after Abraham. So, how can they claim this to be the well of Abraham or the biblical Beersheba?
Why there are not many archaeological findings at this site from time of Abraham? Did Abraham really dwell here? And why is there a disconnection?
The answer to this you might find even more shocking. Zeev Herzog, in an attempt to reconcile these contradictions, sided with Yohanan Aharoni, who offered an alternative explanation, suggesting to move the patriarchal age forward to the 13th or the 12th century BC. What they're basically saying is, let's forget the traditional dating of Abraham's life, which is heavily based on the Bible that says he lived about 4,000 years ago, and assume that he lived about 700 to 800 years after that. To be fair, they didn't say this with 100% certainty, they just said that they inclined to this theory. But there is another explanation, one that is more shocking than anything else we've discovered here today. And it comes from this very old book, written in the mid-1800s. And what we found here changes everything we thought we knew about Beersheba. This explanation is heavily connected with the other suggested site for Beersheba, one that is located only a few miles away at the edge of the modern city.
All right, let's go.
Wow. So there is this place called Abraham's Well International Visitor Center, and they claim to have the actual location of the Well of Abraham. And even though they closed the place due to an event that they were hosting, they allowed us to get in and film before the event started.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, wow. That is so cool.
I mean, do you see the chiseled stones out there?
Wow. I can't believe they let us in.
Wow, this is unbelievable. Look at this.
Okay. It's time for the crown jewel. This is the work of a man named William M. Thompson. It's titled The Land and the Book, and it holds a piece of information that I believe will solve our case. The year 1857. Dr. Thompson, alongside his fellow travelers, journey to the Middle East. Their purpose? Compile world's best archaeological survey of the Holy Land. He actually made a record of how many people lived here at the time, and it's mind-boggling how sparse the population was back then compared to now. It was kind of the perfect time to see the ruins before they were disturbed by the influx of all the people and the modern urbanization. The execution plan? Travel from Dan to Beersheba and using a scientific method, write down a detailed record of the findings. So on page 297, Thompson compiles a record of his colleagues as they travel to Beersheba. And he writes that when his colleague, Dr. Robinson, arrives to Beersheba, he finds 2 deep wells and a few local Bedouins that tell them that the name of this place is Beersheba, which is an Arabic version of the Hebrew words, the well of the oath. This is the well. This is the well that he saw when they got there.
Wow, this is so cool. I can't believe we're looking at an ancient well.
There's another one there. Another opening.
Wow.
The same thing.
Just like in the Thompson's account, there are 2 wells here. The second one located only a few feet away.
Another one.
Interesting. Why are there 2 next to each other?
And the crazy part that he says that these wells were still in use when he got there. And he even tried the waters, and he writes that the water in both wells is pure and sweet and in great abundance. Now that is an incredible eyewitness testimony to something that seems like the well of Abraham. But how do we really know what year it dates to?
I honestly did not expect it to look like this. I really was expecting desert, ruins around, and like this tiny little hole in the ground. This is so different from what I envisioned.
But you know what? I have a question. How do we know that this is actually Abraham who dug this one? How do we know this is the same one? I mean, in this area could have been a lot of them. How do we know this is the exact well?
So when it comes to dating this well, there's this interesting record of Lieutenant Konder, who found an inscription in Arabic dating to the 12th century. But the problem is that the inscription did not mention Abraham. It simply said Muhammad Rasul Allah, which translates to Muhammad the Messenger of Allah. So I inquired my father-in-law Sohail about this. Even though he is a Christian, he has a lot of experience in speaking with Muslims over the years, as he lived most of his life in Nazareth. And he had told me that an inscription like this is very famous amongst Muslims. It is something that they say as a profession of their faith. For example, the Great Mosque in Medina, Saudi Arabia, has a gate with the same inscription.
So what does this inscription mean? Why would they put it on the well?
But how does this relate to Abraham and Abraham's well at all? Well, Sohail further explained that Abraham is one of the key figures in Islam. And that could be this connection to the well. Okay, so we know now that, according to Arab tradition, this is the well of Abraham. It was even preserved in the naming of the site, Beersheba. So it is possible that in the 12th century, they put a stamp on this well, the Muhammad Rasul Allah inscription, to commemorate its significance to the Muslim faith. But again, this is only a speculation based on tradition.
Okay, if Abraham was here, if he dug this well, can you imagine we're like literally touching the well of Abraham? And I can see here the layer. This is restoration at the top. It's kind of obvious that the rocks have been placed here recently. But then on the bottom, those square chiseled rocks, that's just... This well kind of seems like couple miles away from the Tel. Why would it be that way?
That's actually a very good question, because you'd want to live by your source of water, right? You don't want to live far away from it.
And this kind of brings us to this big problem. If this is the well of Beersheba, then what is this other site? The first place we've been to today, the Tel Beersheba. Well, that's the shocking part. Apparently, originally it was not identified as Beersheba at all. When Lieutenant Konder got to the area, he found two sites, the mound at the top and the two wells. That's the second site we went to. And to our surprise, he says the locals call this mound Tel Beersheba, not Tel Beersheba. And he says that this Tel is an entirely different city. The city of Sheva mentioned in Joshua 19, which he says it is a neighboring city to Beersheba. And then he goes on to add that the biblical Beersheba is where the wells of Abraham are. And of course this makes perfect sense, because if you rely on the Arab tradition, you rely on the naming of the sites. Tel Beersheba, Tel Sheva, and Beersheba is Beersheba. And this wasn't just Konder's opinion. Pretty much any other surveyor and archaeologist who came to the area at that time, like Dr. Robinson and Dr. Smith, reached the exact same conclusion. The wells of Abraham is where the biblical Beersheba is at. When Rhoda and I found this out, we were pretty shocked, because who and why would rename this site from Tel Beersheba to Tel Beersheba? Because that's really confusing. I mean, we even have British records from 1917, when the British were fighting for Beersheba. They referred to this mound as Tel Beersheba, still by its local Arab tradition. So why rename the site from Tel Sheva to Tel Beersheba, especially that we already have Beersheba right next to it? Unfortunately, we could not find the reason as to why it was renamed. But what we are finding is that more and more modern archaeologists are catching on to this. Like Professor Volkmar Fritz, who says, obviously, biblical Beersheba was situated in the area of the old city of Beersheba, not 4 miles to the east. Indeed, there is every reason to reject the identification of the Tel with biblical Beersheba in light of the Kirbet, the ruins under the old city. And he finishes with the point, indeed, all the evidence points to a location of ancient Beersheba in the area of the present-day old city. That's quite shocking. But somebody could say, hey, Professor Fritz is writing this in 1993. Obviously, since then, we have more evidence and maybe something new came to light, and they would be right, because just last year, a paper came out by Daniel Varga and Svetlana Chalis, whose entire paper focuses on the vast amount of archaeological data collected from the underground of the modern-day city of Beersheba, and not the Tel. So, if Tel Beersheba is not the biblical Beersheba, what is it then? Well, Konder and Thompson suggest it is the other city mentioned in Joshua 19, the Sheva. But there are many scholars and theologians like Charlie Garrett who suggest this is the same city as Beersheba, it's just the name of the well is Sheba. If you're confused, welcome to the club, because that's what we've been going through for the past 3 months, trying to get to the bottom of this. Why is it so difficult to find conclusive evidence that will unravel this spaghetti? It's like there's this void of archaeological data from the Bronze Age, from the time of Abraham. We need help.
Hi, how are you? How are you guys?
Excellent. Wow, thank you so much for taking this call.
Yeah, no problem.
So it's been a kind of I've been in the rabbit hole trying to find the information about Beersheba. So we have presented this problem to Dr. Tavor, a renowned archaeologist whom we met at the El Araj archaeological dig. And here's what he said.
Can we think of Abraham as an archaeological figure? Herod the Great, he definitely built, right? David, did he build? Did he not build? Abraham, what did Abraham build? He built tents. 3,500 years ago, something like that. He built tents. What would you find from a tent after such a long time?
So the fact that actually we're not finding a city there from that time, if anything, that matches the biblical story, biblical account.
Yes.
So what is the conclusion here? Can we with certainty and confidence say that the Tel Beersheba, this national park, has been misidentified for 30 years? Absolutely not. After thousands of pages and 3 months of research, the only thing I can say with certainty is that I'm no longer certain.
Put in mind that, Robinson had no clue about dating stuff. There's no way to know this is from Abraham times, this is Byzantine or whatever. Those are very initial investigation, which gives a lot of data, a lot of things to think about, but you need to give it a background of current research, yes.
We should be very careful making any dogmatic claims. After all, there is still a chance that the Arab tradition is wrong, that Conder and Thompson they're wrong, and that Herzog was right, and the edification of Beersheba is at the Tel Beersheba site.
Is it this one or one nearby? Like, I'd imagine a lot of wells were dug during that time. And then their rivals would stump them back up, and then they would dig more.
I love what Herzog said in his 1,500 pages final report. We offer this work not as a final report, but as a starting point for further scientific inquiries. Rhoda and I have only spent a couple days at the site and a few months in research. But these people, they have spent their entire lives. And without their hard work, none of this would be possible. So we applaud all of those who have spent their lives excavating, studying it, and protecting it so that you and I may step back in time into biblical history and literally walk on the streets of an ancient Israelite administrative city. Maybe Abraham was not here, but David and Solomon certainly could have.
Oh, wow. Did you enjoy this place?
It's meaningful. It's very meaningful.
In the end, Tel Beersheba is still one of the most fascinating sites in the entire world.
It's like being in the Galilee, in the places where Jesus was, meaningful, and it's meaningful in that way here too. It's so special.
Whether it is Beersheba or not, it still gives us an amazing glimpse into the Israelite kingdom.
And I just remember all the stories of the Bible about Abraham, the forefather of faith.
This is how it works. These are the problems we face daily in our profession.
Wow. Wow. I have all the more respect to what you do. And I'm thinking my head is breaking after a few months of research. I can't imagine you do this for your entire life on certain sites where
I love it.
Life. That's awesome.
So where do we go from here? What is the conclusion here? Well, despite the vast amount of data we have today of all of this region, it's not enough to tell us exactly where Abraham was. We have to rely on tradition, which is part of the collected data set. And we have to remember that Abraham lived in tents, just like Dr. Cointavor said. So what can we expect to find from a tent? Not much. But we did find something interesting. In our research, we found this 1901 map drawn by Dr. Robinson. He went there with one purpose only, and that is to find all of the wells that are believed to be the wells that Abraham dug. And to his surprise, he found 7 of them. And that's really cool because Sheva is not just oath, it also means 7. Yep, that Hebrew word, it has 2 meanings, oath and number 7. And he found 7 wells. But it's something that is completely outside the scope of this video because this video is already getting very long. So we're going to end it here. But if you would like us to go back to Beersheba and try and find those 7 wells, that would be really cool because today they only have 3 known wells. The 2 of them you've seen today. There's another one that people say somewhere out there. Some people found it, but nobody knows where it is. So we couldn't find it either. But now we have this map, leading not just to that extra well, but to all 7 of them. And Dr. Robinson describes one of them that hasn't even been revealed. It was under bushes. So that's very, very interesting. If you think it's a good idea to go back there, please let us know in the comment section below, and maybe there will be a part 2 to this expedition.